I got yelled at by the team last night because we got so geeked out getting ready to talk about coach and game that we really didn't do any formal introductions. So we've carved out the first 30 minutes here to talk about ourselves. And no, in all seriousness, Mike Brown, Chief Revenue Officer here at V1 Sports. Background, I actually worked for Brian in some past lives, helped him grow a company years ago, and we got the band back together in 2017. And Brian, it's a lot's changed since then, but I think listening to folks like Mr. Bender and Dana, I mean, stuff has stayed so much still the same, right? Yeah. And so strengthened partnerships with Body Track along the way, working on integrations with Foresight, and then I think we got Dallas here was part of one of those pieces, right, of helping us extend the offerings. So just a really cool experience the last few years for you and I, right, to be part of this industry, right? And so we're here today, as many of you know, right, talking about V1 Game. Spent a lot of time last night talking about coach and game, but I'm going to hand it over to Brian, to you. Maybe you can share a little bit about where you see game going with you in Dallas and some other things you guys are working on, and then obviously we'll hand it over to Dallas to get us going here. So.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Mike. So Brian Finnerty, CEO of V1 Sports, and as Mike mentioned, a sort of new rebirth for our company. As many of you may know, we are a 25-year-old company that we feel very much like a startup, which is exciting, certainly for me in this seat. And I know you're going to hear that in Dallas. We talk about V1 Game, which has been such a great addition to being able to take your game from the range, which, Range and Academy was the basis of V1 Golf. And we work with over 17,000 instructors, have over 4 million golfers in our platform, to take that and then be able to go out on the golf course and really track what is actually happening so that we can then take that back and go live. So that's been exciting for us. A little bit of housekeeping before I turn it over to you, Dallas. If you have any questions, certainly put them in the chat section below. We will do our best. Mike Brown and I are going to co-host here, so we'll do our best to pepper the questions in. Dallas is our resident expert. He's certainly not only the mastermind behind what V1 Game is and is going to talk about that, but also does the development work. So very unique individual in that he sees the behind the scenes work that goes on and actually has got his hands in the dough there, and is also a very accomplished golfer in his own right and sees it out on the golf course and what really works. So if you've got questions, post them there. If we don't get to all of them, we certainly will answer them offline. But we're going to spend about the next 45 minutes hearing about V1 Game and what it does and some of the attributes. We'll break that up with some questions, and then we'll leave about 10, 15 minutes at the end for straight Q&A, but we'll try to pepper them in as we go. And then in the audience, I think we've had a couple of thousand people over the course of the day's sessions yesterday. We've got a blend between golf pros and golfers, right? So you're going to kind of hear Dallas talk about both sides of this and what data gets collected that may help a golf pro. And hopefully if you're a golfer like Mike and I and Dallas, you'll also take some application of what it might mean for you if you're just working on your own game and you're out on the golf course. So that's the speed round of kind of where we're going. And with that, Dallas, I'm going to turn it over to you, maybe a quick intro and then kind of take us in.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for touching base, I guess, on a little bit of an intro. Yeah, I'm Dallas. I am the developer passion project person for V1 Game and for V1 Coach. And really, I started developing this platform, 4 or 5 years ago when it was Excel spreadsheets and Perl scripts trying to crunch data so I could look at it. I am a self-confessed data nerd. And really why I put it together was to help my own golf game. I had read Mark Brody's Every Stroke Counts book. I got into that strokes gained piece. I saw it as an opportunity to improve my own golf game, particularly as I started to, grow my family and was practicing less. And so I was turning to statistics to help me do that. That ended up turning into an app and turning into this partnership with V1 Game and V1 Sports. So I developed it selfishly to help myself play better golf, and then figured why not try to give it to the masses and help other people play better golf as well. And that's how we got to this point. So that said, I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop. I got a few slides maybe we'll go through to kind of give a background before we jump into a bit of a live demo. So this particular session is going to focus on V1 Game. We'll talk a little bit about how that goes in with V1 Coach, but hopefully most of you saw the V1 Coach piece last night as well, but we'll be happy to answer any questions on both platforms as we go. So V1 Game and V1 Coach. V1 Game is really our player-facing app. It's for when you're on the golf course to capture your on-course performance, turn that into, shot tracking, turn that into statistics. And then those statistics and those analytics can be used by the player, obviously, to know what they're doing and to improve. But all that information is also fed to the coach via the V1 Coach platform that allows the coach to see what the player's doing, how they're performing, where they might be missing or mistakes they might be making, so that you can take that information, connect it with the things you're working on in those lessons and those practice sessions, and make sure that all of that work you're putting in on the range and with V1 Golf and with the swing analysis is actually translating to on-course performance. So really, we've got this nice feedback loop between on-course performance with V1 Game to your swing analysis and your lessons with V1 Coach and V1 Golf and V1 Pro. So in my mind, in this way, it all starts with V1 Game, right? Most of the people that are playing golf and getting lessons and going through the swing pieces because they want to play better golf. V1 Game helps you capture that performance on the golf course and what you're doing on the golf course. So it starts with the GPS app. We'll show a little bit of that, but really it's the shot tracking and then the analysis that happens behind that really unlocks some of the insights that we have to help you understand where you might be struggling with your game, areas where you could improve, and also things that you're doing well. Essentially, V1 Game is ShotLink for amateurs. So if you're familiar with the PGA Tour and how they track shots and what they use for their statistics, this is the same thing, only it's at the amateur level. Instead of having, thousands of volunteers following you around shooting golf balls with lasers, we're using cell phone technology, watch technology to essentially do the same thing in a very automated way. And so that's where we go into some detail here. If you're not familiar with ShotLink, this shows kind of what that is. So on the right-hand side, you'll see Justin Thomas, you see his scorecard, and you see how the PGA Tour has tracked his shots. Essentially, that yellow line and those dots that you see are everywhere that Justin Thomas hit a golf ball. So they know how far his ball went, whether he missed left or right. They know what lie it was in. They know just about everything about the shots that he hit. So when you're watching a PGA Tour telecast and they say, hey, Justin Thomas hasn't three-putted for 20 holes, it's based on this data in the background. For V1 Game, we're doing essentially the same thing. So what you see there is a snapshot of the app after somebody has tracked some shots, but we've tracked every location the user has hit shots, the lie. And from that simple location information, we can calculate just about anything. We can calculate how many fairways you've hit, how many greens you've hit, how many times you got up and down, driving distance, of course, strokes gained. But from a user perspective, really all you're doing is marking shot locations or allowing our AI to mark those shot locations for you as you play. So we've kind of taken that most golfers would be familiar at some level of tracking their fairways on their scorecard and writing all these things down so that they can go process it later. V1 Game takes care of that for you and then unlocks our powerful analytics on the back end. So why do you need these statistics? Why can't I just track my fairways and be done with it? Again, for anybody who's read Mark Brody's book, Every Shot Counts, it'll start to walk you through that not all shots in the fairway are created equal. So tracking some of those traditional stats don't really translate to score. And I think there's a reason why you see the Bryson DeChambeaus of the world trying to hit it as far as possible, because analytics will tell you that distance has more value than hitting the fairway in many cases. So missing the fairway is not always bad. And this little correlation plot here between scores and fairways is actually my own data, but it would show you that if I hit 9 fairways, which would rank about 70th on the PGA Tour, I've shot anywhere from 72 to 86, hitting 9 fairways. So that fairway and tracking fairways isn't necessarily going to be reflective of how I'm playing or that score. And you'll see on the right-hand side, that's a shot of Pebble Beach. But if you look at the strokes gained for those 3 shots, barring being completely plugged, I'll take that 8-iron from the end of that shot over the ocean over the one that's 220 yards in the middle of the fairway all day. That's a scary shot to be hitting a long iron into a green. And then here's another example with putting. So let's say on the day I have 29 putts. Most people would look at 29 putts and say, yeah, that's a pretty good day. But if I missed every green and I chipped all of those putts up to, say, 3 feet, would that 29 or 26 putts be a good number? No, I should have made all of those. I should have had 18 putts. So the distance of the putt matters. And that's what's lost when you do things like just track putts. The good news is V1 Game takes care of that for you. So on the bottom, you'll see an example of some of the analytics we get at the end. But now you can see how often you 1-putt, 2-putt, 3-putt from any distance from the hole, and you can get an idea of where you're gaining or losing strokes relative to a reference, right? We have very good references from the PGA Tour and what they would do with putting. But now with V1 Game, we also have very good references for what a 5 handicap does, a 25 handicap does, so that you can compare your performance to those different reference levels and, go through your progression of game improvement, not always comparing yourself to a PGA Tour pro, which is unattainable for most of us mere mortals.
Hey, Dallas, one of the maybe a half step back here, and one of the questions just popped up was, how difficult is it to input this data like on the golf course? Is it disruptive to your game? I certainly have my own answer to this, which would be not at all, but maybe walk through what are the different methods somebody could input data from, fully immersive, doing it every time, to not at all and doing it after. Maybe walk us through that real quick.
Yeah, so I guess my plan was to do that a little bit in the demo. So I think I've got maybe 1 or 2 more slides, and then we're going to jump into that. And I'm going to show you in the app exactly what it looks like, our breadcrumbs, all our technology, the different ways you can get that. Certainly going to answer that. I think what I'm trying to accomplish here at the beginning of this is why would you go through that effort at all? We're making it as close to no effort as possible, but why are you even interested? Why are you here? Well, if you want to get better, you got to go look at what you're doing to know where to improve. And the best in the business know that. So this is just an example from Justin Thomas. If you see on the right-hand side, just about every year he shares his goals for that year, usually after the fact. But if you go look at the goals that like a Justin Thomas has, roughly a third of them are stats-based goals, right? Not just winning tour events and doing this, but actually improving analytically. So improving in strokes gained, improving in scoring average, all of those things. Without a platform like V1 Game, it's hard to track those things. We solve that problem so that you can actually track and see those different areas where you may be improving or where you still need to work. I think yesterday, to tie it back to Brian Mogg, when he was talking about on the PGA Tour, at the end of the year, they have all these stats from what they did in 2020 to help them make their game plan for 2021. V1 Game can do that for amateurs. If you're collecting your data, you're getting that baseline, then you can use V1 Game and the data of how you play golf to set your game plan for 2021 with what you're going to do, what you're going to work on from a lesson perspective, from a practice perspective, to make sure you're working on the things that are going to impact what we all care about, which is score. To tie it to the coach piece real quick before we jump into that demo, all of the data that you collect in V1 Game, so all of this shot data, the analytics, feeds directly into our V1 Coach platform. So the benefit of the V1 Coach platform is it also has some artificial intelligence to analyze those results for coaches, so that when that player is coming to you for a lesson or you're about to go to the practice tee, you can look at it and get a snapshot of their last 5 rounds or 10 rounds, whatever you want, and say, this is what we should be working on based on your data, rather than just asking the player, hey, what do you want to work on today? Or where are you struggling? You actually have data and analytics that back that up, so you're focused on the right thing, so that then when you go have that lesson, it can be a targeted lesson, solving something that's really going to translate back to their golf game. And the nice thing is you got that feedback loop that allows you to then track progress against whatever you were working on, whether it's driving distance or iron accuracy. You can then use V1 Game to measure that you're getting a result from that interaction. And that's the example we're given here with the iron accuracy. So all of that data starts on V1 Game. It's going to tell you, hey, this player is missing greens. In this case, you can see the player is missing greens short and left. That information gets fed to the coach. Obviously, the player sees it as well, but it's kind of like a doctor-patient situation. The player may see the symptom that they're missing left and short, but sometimes you need that doctor to come in and tell you how to remedy that situation and get better. So certainly not a replacement for coaches, but really we're trying to empower coaches and accelerate that improvement. You can have that targeted lesson. We'll show a little bit of this data here in a second, but it can drill down as deep as you want to go to say, hey, not only are you missing greens from this distance, but where you're having the most troubles from 125 to 150 yards. So let's go focus on that. You'll get that feedback loop and you can go measure, say, strokes gained approach to make sure that that lesson is translating to better golf on the golf course. And with that, let's jump into the demo and show you just how easy it is to use and how the platform works. So
Dallas, sorry to interrupt, but one of the things you mentioned last night was value early, right? I think it was 1 round, right? You're going to still see value from that. So I think if you can illustrate that throughout, the next 40 minutes or so, address some of the challenges that some of our coaches that are on the line are going to hear from students. Just getting started, right? You know, we talk about creating the game plan, right? From, you mentioned, alluded to Brian Mogg talking about it with Brian yesterday. You know, how can I create a game plan if I didn't use V1 Game in 2020? Like, what are those things that I can quickly start doing with a round or two or three, and starting building that game plan, you know, at the beginning of the season, next couple months, or midstream. So, you know, I'm asking some of these things because we have both instructors listening in and we have some golfers too. So I think those are a couple of things, and we're already getting a few questions. Randy, thank you. Juan, we'll come back to some of those questions. We'll probably pick some off as we go, but we'll definitely come back to you there. So sorry, Dallas, keep going.
No problem. So we're going to cover some of that, and we'll get into the value you get out of it and just how quickly you can make this platform useful. And when I start showing things like the round summary, the post-round summary, what you're going to see is you're going to get useful information the very first round that you play in this platform. But what you're looking at right now is, at its core, V1 Game is a golf GPS app. So if you're on the golf course and you need help with course management or getting yardages, just knowing what's on a golf course, let's say if you've never played it before and you want to know, is there a hazard up there? Is there a problem up there? We're a golf GPS. You can pull it out. You can look at our beautiful aerial images of the golf course, see where the bunkers are, where the hazards are, and do your game plan. You can tap anywhere on the hole to get a yardage, to get a distance. In this case, my simulated location is getting close to green. But what you also see on the screen is this dash blue line and then these white circles, and I'll explain what those are. The dash blue line is what we call breadcrumbs. And essentially, when you start a round with V1 Game, we begin tracking your location on the golf course. So we know where you're going, how long you were in locations. We're using other sensors on the phone like accelerometer and whatnot to track where you're going and to detect golf activity. If you have an Apple Watch, we also have swing detection built into the Apple Watch. So we can actually use the sensors on the watch to detect when you've made a swinging motion and mark those locations. What that effectively allows us to do is track where you're hitting shots and how far shots are going, all transparent to you while you're just playing golf. So I'm going to jump back a couple holes to show you kind of what that would look like. So in this case, the player has finished the first hole. And you see the blue breadcrumbs. This is where he went. It was a cart path only day. So you can see him driving his cart on, driving off, going near the green. The green circles are where the Apple Watch detected a swing. And we are, 100% confident that a golf swing happened from that location. In this case, it's a simulator, so it's not using the accelerometers on the phone. But the white dots would be where we think there might have been a swing, because maybe you were standing there for a long time. Maybe you were looking for another player's ball or whatnot. And so those might have been shots. But we've done all this work in the background while you've played. So what the user will do, either after the round, either from their wrist while they're playing, or while they're playing, anytime they increment the hole, they're going to put in their score. So in this case, let's say I made a 4 and I one putted from 10 feet. What you're going to see when I come back is our artificial intelligence kind of uses that information and starts marking the shot locations, right? So it knows where you tee shot, where you hit your second shot, and it's going to mark the other shots. Now, in this case, maybe this shot was not where I intended it to be. Maybe I actually hit the chip shot from up here. Again, if you're on the golf course, it behaves a little differently than the simulator. But making edits, if you do need to change anything, is super simple as well. I would just grab this shot, long press it, drag it up to the green, and now I've got that shot marked. So as simple as that, you can start to mark locations as you play. And now we know that you hit a tee shot. We know you hit it 218 yards. We know it went into the fairway. We know you hit that shot 120 yards and you missed to the right-hand side of the green. So just like that, we actually just took a few location points and we turned that into fairways, greens, where you missed, how far you hit your shot. All of that information we can extract just from those shot locations. If I, start to kind of go through here. So here's another hole. Let's say if I mark this one and let's say I made a 4 with a 2 putt from 22 feet, you'll see that if I go back, it's marked that hole, right? It's automatically figured out where the shots were, marked it, and I don't have to do anything else from a user standpoint. So just like that, it's very automatic in terms of marking those shots, particularly if you have the swing detection with the Apple Watch. Now Not everybody has an Apple Watch. We don't yet support Wear OS on Android, but that is something we're looking into as well. But if you don't have an Apple Watch, the flow is very similar, but slightly different. So an example here would be, let's say I hit my tee shot, and maybe here I was looking for my partner's ball in the bushes, or something else was going on over here and that wasn't my shot. Then it's real simple to even improve in those situations where I could just click on this and it's going to ask me if I hit a shot from there, and I can say no. And then I'll move on and go ahead and put in my score, and it'll mark those shots. So just by putting in your information in that way, if I pull up the scorecard, right, all of this information, it's pulling from those locations without me having to answer it, right? I didn't tell the app whether I hit the fairway. I didn't tell the app whether I hit the green. I didn't tell it a lot of this information, but the app is using those locations to calculate that and much more, including strokes gained, which we'll show kind of in the post-round summary.
And where was your phone? Did it have to be with you, or could you leave it in the car?
If you have a watch, particularly, of course, you can leave it in the cart. If you don't have a watch, you can still leave it in the cart. What we recommend is that you put the phone in your back pocket, or in a pocket, any pocket really, because that's where you'll get the best combination of data from the sensors that are available. But we also understand that a lot of our players don't like having the phone on them. That's part of where they're trying to get away. Or maybe we have female golfers that their wardrobe doesn't allow for pockets for a big cell phone. In that case, you can leave the phone in a golf cart or in your golf bag, and it'll still do 90% of the work for you, because it's going to know where that golf cart went, where that golf bag went. You just might have to do slightly more editing after the round if you don't keep your phone on your person.
I think that we're getting a couple questions actually about editing. So I think at some point, I think for you to go through that as well, that post round, even though they were marking along the way, I think is helpful, right? Yeah. That was when we first started working on this, right? That was one of my, hey, how do I go back and do that, right? In addition to, okay, what's my workflow, Dallas? Right now, you've made some awesome advancements in terms of the auto shot detection, but I think that's a concern. We're getting questions on that now of slow play issues. How do I just continue to just go enjoy the game and play, but still do that, right? So some of those, we've addressed some of those concerns. Maybe you can talk a little bit to that as well.
Yeah. So I love the questions and the way that's headed. So the good news is, if you start a round and you put your phone away, you put it in your pocket, you honestly don't have to pull it out at all the entire time you play, because we are tracking your breadcrumbs. We're tracking those predicted shots. You can use your paper scorecard to write down your score. And ideally you would write down your number of putts and the length of putts if you're not going to use the app at all in the golf course. But you don't ever have to pull the phone out of your pocket if you don't like, because we're tracking your breadcrumbs and your locations. So when you pull it back out, when you're done sitting in the comfort of your home, it's showing you everywhere you went. And when you start putting in your scores, it does 90% of the work for you. So you can just do very minor edits to get it where you want to go. I guess the other way I would say that is, if V1 game is interfering with your game or it's a distraction on the golf course, you're probably using it wrong, and we can help you. So I encourage you to reach out to us if you ever find that to the situation, and let's make sure that you know all of the options that you have to use it. It should absolutely not be a distraction. In fact, when I play today, I often, like I said, I leave my phone in my pocket. I do have an Apple Watch, which I use primarily, and I don't pull the phone out at all the entire time I'm playing around a golf. So you can, and to make that point, you can add scores from your wrist. So in this case, let's say I'm done with hole 4. It doesn't have the auto shot tracking yet because the simulator hasn't gotten that far. But what you would do is I'd go in here and say, yep, let's say I made a 3 with a 2 putt from 11 feet. I can mark that from my wrist, and it actually goes into the phone and takes care of that for me. So from the wrist, I've told it that I'm playing from the white tee box. So it marks that tee box, it marks the putts, and I didn't have to do anything. I'm done. I just put in the score from my wrist as I was playing, and the phone never comes out.
And we talked about last night where it's like, I don't have an Apple Watch, but I go press play, start the first tee, and I can leave the phone in my pocket the whole time.
Correct.
And there's tons of data captured at that point. I just haven't entered the actual club that I've hit in those spots at that point. So I think, at least for some of the players, right, of that being a distraction, that's another way of concern-wise, you're going to get tons of value, right, if you do nothing, right? You just got to turn it on, essentially, right?
Yep, you'll get a ton of value just putting your scores in either after the round, at the end of the day, if you never touch it. And If you don't want to get the phone out at all while you're playing, we can support that as well. You won't have the breadcrumbs and the shot predictions, but so here's an example. Let's say I'm on the 7th hole. I'm sitting in my couch and I forgot to get my phone out at all. I didn't do anything in V1 game. It's still very easy to go track around even after the fact. Let's say you download the app today, but you played yesterday. If you remember, at least in general locations, where you were that round, you can go do it after the fact. So I'll show you how to do that right now, which will also show how to do some of the editing. So I'm on hole 7. Let's say I made a 5, right? I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say I made a 5 and I 2-putted from whatever it is, 24 feet. Now what happens when I go back to hole 7, you'll notice it added 5 shots. Now, since I didn't use it on the golf course, it doesn't know where those 5 shots came from, but it's kind of pre-populated those shots. It populated the tee shot on the tee box that I selected and gave me 2 more locations. So if I need to edit it, again, let's say I didn't use the auto shot detection, I didn't use it on the golf course. Again, it's very simple. I can go drag my second shot and I can say, well, I had about 134 yards to the green. And what I'm looking at is that label on the bottom of the screen, if you see there. So I can go drag and I know about how far away I was. And when we're talking about fairways and tee shots and rough, within a couple yards is more than adequate. You don't have to dial this in exactly. If you're within 5 or 6 yards, you're going to get pretty good strokes gained information for what you did. So I'll drag that to where that was. And then let's say I overshot the green and had to chip back. So I'll go drag it over here and let it go. Just like that, I've tracked this hole and I could move on. But so you can imagine, even after the fact, if I did nothing with the auto shot detection on the golf course, I can mark 18 holes in under 10 minutes to track the entire round from scratch, just, off of memory, or maybe I took notes. You don't have to add club information. If you want to add club information, let's say later I want to know that I didn't hit driver on this hole or whatnot. We do have some stats that are club related. That's simple too. You can tap on any shot and go add the club information, as simple as just tapping on it and clicking on those shots. And just like that, I've marked this hole. We do have some nice friendly shortcuts. You can, if you don't want to put in score and you want to skip to the next hole, you can just swipe from the side, swipe from either side, and you can change holes without bypassing that. If you tap on the flag, it'll quickly zoom into the green. If you tap on it again, it'll zoom back out to the hole. But so yeah, it's as easy as that to add shots. Now, one of the questions we get quite a bit is, well, what about penalties? Penalties can be a bit of a pain point. And the reality is, no matter what shot tracking system you're using, even our competitors that have dedicated hardware, it's very difficult to automatically detect penalties. And that's somewhat obvious in that if you hit it into somebody's backyard, or if you hit it into a lake, you're not likely to jump into that lake and swim to your ball. So if I don't know that you went to the lake, it's hard for me to predict that that's where your shot went. That's fine. It's still very easy to go track penalties. So in this case, let's simulate, hitting it out of bounds and having to re-tee, right? That's a out of bounds common thing. The first thing I always like to do is just put in my score. So I'm going to say I made a 7, again with a 2-putt, let's say from 13 feet this time. When I go back, you'll see that it's added those 7 shots. Okay. It doesn't know where I was, again, because I didn't use it on the golf course. If you did use it on the golf course, these would be in smarter positions from the jump. But first thing I need to do is I hit my first tee shot out of bounds into the houses. So I'll just take my second shot. I'll drag it into the houses approximately where it went. I'll tap on that shot and say that was a penalty. Then my next shot, again, real easy, just long press and drag these to put them wherever they want. In this case, I went out of bounds, so I had to re-tee. My fourth shot, let's say I had 270 yards. And then my fifth shot was just short of the green, and I knocked it on the green for my 7. So that's what you would do if you didn't use auto shot detection and you're doing this all from scratch. That's as painful as it can possibly get. Our solutions with the auto shot detection, if I go back, obviously are much simpler than that and really make the process about as easy as it can be. So that's kind of the editing in that piece. Let's get to what you get out of it when you're all said and done. So in this case, I'm going to delete this round because we haven't finished marking it. So we'll delete that, and I'll go dive into a round that I've played before. So obviously, hopefully you can see that, one, I'm a believer in this system. I've tracked 160 or so of my own rounds of golf in here. So I have a complete history of every course I've played and every shot that I hit in those rounds. But if I open up any random round, this post-round summary that I'm going to open is what you get at the end of every round that you play. And so it's saying my score. In this case, it's giving me strokes gained information. So it's comparing me to the reference that I selected when I set up my account. So I'm about a 2 handicap, so I compare myself to a scratch player. Typically, that's the next level, let's say, that I'm trying to get to. And so this is comparing my performance to that scratch handicap. So you can see that I lost 1.4 strokes for driving, 3.8 for approach. I lost 3.6 for putting, and I gained 1.7 strokes for short game. Now, for me, I almost always lose strokes with approach relative to a scratch. I know that that's my weak point after using this app for a significant amount of time, but the app does that analysis for you and goes beyond just strokes gained. So a lot of our users, a lot of golfers don't necessarily know what strokes gained is, or how do I use this information and how do I put it to good use? The nice thing is we dive into that information and give you those details. So what I'm going to do is just kind of swipe through some of these different pieces, and it's going to tell me what I should be working on. Now, I told you I typically lose strokes approach almost every time I play. So that's not my worst category for this particular day. Actually, relative to my normal performance, I putted poorly. And it's going to tell me that this was a poor putting day. And if you don't know what you're looking at or you don't understand the plot, we have this helpful help button that'll explain what it is that you're looking at. But what you're looking at is 1 putt, 2 putt, and 3 putt percentages from distances ranging from 3 feet up to 50 feet. So at a glance, what this is telling me is I 3 putted from long distance many times, and I missed at least 1 putt inside 6 feet. So if I was going to improve my putting, obviously I need to work on the 3 putts. I probably should have lag putted better from these long distances. And I missed at least 1 short putt inside of 6 feet. So not only is it telling my strokes gain was poor, but it's telling me why. It's telling me how to go fix that putting. I'm going to go fix that putting by working on my lag putting so that I don't 3 putt. If I keep scrolling through, it's again going to analyze each section of my game. So it was a poor approach day for me. I tended to miss short and long, and I made at least 1 approach error. Now, an error is when you hit a shot into a penalty or a recovery situation. I keep growing. It was a poor driving day for me as well, and that's because I had 2.5 driving errors. So a half is when you hit it into like a punch out situation, whereas a full error is if you hit it into a lake or into a house. So I had 2.5 penalties with my driver on that day, and that's why it was a poor driving day for me. And again, the system gets smarter the more you use it. It learns how you play, it learns what you're good at, and gives you feedback relative to your golf game.
So Dallas, I think that's a good point there of, the system's learning, right? So are these slides that you're going through, they're consistently there every single time, right? That's an output. So you can count on these slides that you're going through right now. They'll be there every time. What will vary obviously are the stats, and then the system telling you whether you were average, poor, or you played well that day, correct?
Correct. So it's actually, again, analyzing my performance for that day. So the order of these slides changes based on my performance that day. So here's a day when I played poorly, and I show you the putting and everything. I'll show you a day when I played better here in just a second, just to give you that contrast. But one of the other nice things it does is here I shot at 82. It's telling my potential on the day was a 72. If I did some kind of low hanging fruit, like didn't 3 putt, I eliminated 2 chips. 2 chips are when you miss the green from inside 75 yards. And I eliminated penalties. So if I just eliminated some of those big items, I could have actually had a pretty good day for me. And so that feedback helps me know that I'm making big mistakes or course management mistakes to get to where I was. Now, if I jump out of this one,
so
I'm going to go.
As you're doing that, we got this question last night too, like where's the data coming from, strokes gain? What are the sources that you're using or we're using for that? And I think so you can touch on that, and then and you may be getting here, right, of action items. How am I creating action items for, from a DIY level? And then obviously there's nothing, we talked about this last night, there's nothing better than going to the coach, right? I only know so much as a player. I'm going to need that expert to help me out. Maybe you can, but from a DIY perspective, how do I get those action items out of here?
Yeah. So, the base reference from the PGA Tour, there's plenty of resources there where you can go get, what PGA Tour players do on average to get that baseline reference of a PGA Tour player. And then as we've collected data from our users, we then know how to adjust that for different handicap levels. I know how a 5 handicap compares to that PGA Tour player, so I can adjust everything based on handicap from that original reference where you've got the mountains of PGA Tour data that's available. So that's really how we build our references. And we have references from PGA Tour to 25 handicap for both males and females. So again, those adjustments are based on looking at our user data and seeing how to adjust for those various levels of player skill. And then, yeah, so let's talk about what do I do with this data and how do I turn that into a practice plan or turn that into a conversation with a coach. We do some fun stuff to where if you're the first one to play a course, or if you set the course record for V1 game, we'll tell you that. We'll tell you what the average score is for people and what you scored. So that's what you're seeing here. In this case, I set the course record for this course. But so here's a good day for me, right? Now, compared to that same scratch reference, I gained strokes driving. I didn't gain strokes approach, but that's a very good approach day for me. And I gained strokes in the other categories as well. So now as I swipe through, you'll notice the order of the slides changed because the worst area for me was short game. Even though I gained strokes, I typically gain more than that on a scratch player. So for me, it was an average day around the green, not poor, not bad, just an average day for me. So it was an average putting day for me, an average day driving, but it was a good approach day. So every time you analyze, it gets smarter and it's giving you that feedback so that you know what you did well or did poorly. So the way I would use that is if I'm going to see my teaching professional or whatnot, and let's pull up a different round, and I'm constantly seeing in this post-round summary similar things. Like for me, I said I struggle with approach. If it's constantly telling me I'm struggling with approach, that's an item I probably want to talk about with my coach. Hey, I keep seeing this every time I play. I tend to be struggling with my irons. It's telling me I'm missing short. What can we do to fix that? And now we can have that intelligent conversation and say, okay, is it a course management thing where you're just choosing the wrong club and you don't know how far you hit your shots? Let's talk through that. Is it a ball striking thing where you're hitting it fat or you're hitting it thin and your contact's just not good enough? Let's talk about that, right? You can go through the different items that might lead to that symptom and then create a plan around it so that now the next time I play, I can try to make those adjustments, whether it's to ball striking or to club selection, and see if it makes an impact, see if my approach starts to improve and it's not the worst part of my game each time I play. And so with that, you get that post-round summary the very first time you play. So like I said, in one round, you're going to get data that's going to help you play better golf. But the beautiful thing about it is the more you play it, the more we learn about you, and the better information that we can give to you. So I'm going to jump into our virtual coach system, and this is really analyzing my game. So it's going to tell me that, on average, I'm shooting around a 75 today, but I'm making roughly 4 mistakes per round. And mistakes are what we call 3 putts, penalties, and 2 chips. So if I were able to eliminate those kinds of mistakes, I could actually be shooting closer to a 71 on average. It's again analyzing all of my data to tell me if I want to make the biggest impact to my game right now, I should be focused on my approach game. And what's nice, again, all of these things are interactive. If I want to drill down on that approach game and say, okay, well, what should I be doing? I can click on it. Here, let me flip this. And what this is showing me is it's a histogram. So this is showing me how often I have each type of shots from distances of less than 30 yards up to 200 yards. And then this blue line is showing me my strokes gained from each distance. So we also have some intelligence built in where our virtual coach is analyzing all of this data and fast tracking you towards that takeaway. So what it's telling me is if I work on one thing, I'm losing most of my strokes from shots over 200 yards. So I need to make better decisions, hit better shots from more than 200 yards. If I go to next, it's going to tell me my next biggest target area that I need to focus on is 126 to 150 yards. So we went from a very general analysis that I struggle with irons to some very specific things I can go work on. I need to work on long irons and I need to be better from 126 to 150 yards. Those are where I'm struggling. So what are some commonalities or some things that are going on there that can help me play better golf? And if I want to, let's say I want to drill down on this further, 126 to 150 yards, if I hit this review button, it's going to take me to the actual shot histograms. So these are all the shots that I've hit for the current filter settings from that yardage and where I missed. So it's telling me I tend to miss left and short. So what does that mean? Does that mean the lie angle on my club's no good? Does that mean my grip is too strong? Does that mean, I don't know. I'm not a teaching professional, right? But this is the conversation I would have with my teaching professional. This is what I'm seeing. What could cause this? What should I be working on? And then, go through that lesson, go through that practice, and then feed it back and see if it actually starts to make a difference in how I'm playing on the golf course. And you'll see, for instance, with these shot distributions, I can scroll through from 75 yards all the way up to that 200-yard value. And I'll see with my own game, the further away from the hole I get, I do tend to miss more left and more short. So if anybody wants to shoot me a free lesson after this, I would gladly take it to try to improve my own game. But you can see the power of all that data we've collected for this user. In this case, it's myself. The more data you put in, the more we can get out and the more we can help you play better golf. If I go to the next one, I'll go to putting and show you, since I did show this plot to kind of tap through it. Again, our virtual coach and some of the intelligence we have in the app will automatically analyze the data so that you don't have to stare at this plot and say, what is this trying to tell me? I don't understand. We're going to cut through all of that with our virtual coach system and tell you exactly what you need to know if you just glance at this plot. And what it's going to tell me is my worst performance for the current filter settings are from 10 to 15 feet. So I need to work on kind of that mid-range putt is where I'm not doing so hot. And it's likely because I've 3-putted a few times recently from that distance. So that's where I need to focus. If I click on next insight, you'll see it kind of march through. My next worst spot is from 6 to 10 feet. So if I was going to carve out 30 minutes to practice right now, which, can be difficult with I've got a 7-month-old at home and whatnot, but now I know exactly what to go work on. I'm not going to waste time hitting a bunch of maybe lag putts where my strokes gain performance is okay. I'm going to go focus on the area that's going to give me an immediate payback to my golf game and where I currently am.
So I think you're right on the right plot here, right? Your word, right? With Colin McNeely asking you, does the app determine the length of the second or third putt on the greens? Right. So you can determine, right, if that lag putting's the issue, right, or not. So how does that measurement, right? Maybe you can show us that how to.
Yeah, so good question. So I'll take that opportunity also to show you how you start around and that piece. Let's get into it and I'll show you how that putting works. So the app does make some assumptions if you're trying to put in the data quickly with our quick putt on what that second putt would be. But in general, it's going to be right 99% of the time, and every now and then you can go make an override. But so let's start a new round. It's going to bring up your nearby courses. Of course, you can search for any golf course that you like, but it'll bring up nearby courses. When you select the course, this is a debug build, but this is what's going to be coming to everybody very soon. So I wanted to show this instead of maybe what's on the store right now so that this isn't outdated by tomorrow. But you'll choose the round type, anywhere from casual to tournament. If you choose tournament, it does make us USGA compliant. So it does things like hides the weather and elevation and strokes gain, but you can choose the round type. This will be used for filters in the data later, and you can choose your tee box. And I'll start a round. And here we go. So let's answer your question. Let's say if I go mark this as a 2-putt. So I'm going to say I made a 4 with a 2-putt from 20 feet. What the app does in general is it's going to assume that the second putt was a tap in anytime it's a 2-putt. So you'll see here, this is the shot by shot view, but I have 2 putts. The first one was from 20 feet. The second one was from 2 feet. So it made that a tap in. If I wanted to change that, let's say I actually hit a poor first putt and then I had to make like an 8-footer coming back, I could go in here and adjust that, right? But the vast majority of the time, if you're hitting a putt and you're 2-putting, most of your putts on the golf course are going to be tap ins. So that handles most of the situations. If you need to override it, you can go override it here to go change that second putt, let's say to an 8-footer. It's a little bit different if you 3-putt, and I'll show that here. So let's say in this case, I made a 5 with the 3-putt from 40 feet. The app makes an assumption there, since you did 3-putt, that your second putt was probably not as close as a gimme. So in this case, it takes that 40 feet and it cuts it more or less by 5 and makes that your second putt. So it's going to assume that went 40 feet to 8 feet. Again, your last putt always kind of being that gimme. This is adjustable if you need to adjust it. What we're trying to do with that intelligence is make it so that it's right 98% of the time, and you can put in that putting information really, really fast. But if you ever need to go override it, the data will be as accurate as you want to make it if you want to go override it. So I could go dial this in and I could say, well, actually I missed a really short one and then had a tap in there. And just like that, I've got the putts tracked properly so that they feed that other data in the way that I want it fed.
Perfect.
So that's, in a nutshell, that's how you're kind of using the app and tracking it. Now you have the the analyze section is kind of where you can add friends. If you are an instructor, you could also add your students if you wanted to see them here in the V1 game app. I showed on the coaching side how you would use the coaching app to do that yesterday. I'm going to try to pull that up while I'm talking. But so in the coaching app, right, this is how all that data feeds. So that 77 and those rounds I was showing feed directly into that coach app, to where if I wanted to go in the same way, dive into that round that I played, I could go tap on that. I could go dive into the round, and the same information that the student sees, the coach sees. So I can go dive in here and help that student. If that student says, hey, I had a rough round yesterday, I don't know what to go work on, the coach could go dive into here and say, okay, well, how'd you make that double bogey, and really start to understand what the student did and help them. Or of course, get the high level things that student might want to work on. The other thing I'll show.
Obvious question. I think this is exactly where you're going. We had a question from a high school coach. I know we've talked to a couple of college coaches in the last day or so, and we spent time with the NCAA college coaches during non-COVID times out at their annual show. But for a high school coach, the question was, can I use this, to help manage my team and to see my players?
Absolutely. So like I said, you have all your players here. You can dive into any of their individual data as well. The nice thing for high school coaches and college coaches, if you click on this coach section, it'll show you, I'm looking at a team that I've created, but it'll show you those players, their strokes gain data relative to each other. You got some fun leaderboards where you can see who's hitting the longest drive, who's, making the most birdies. You can also use it for that course management piece. So all that shot by shot data is here. Let me go to a team where the players have played the same golf course real quick. Go to V1 University. All right. And one thing you'll notice too, if you are a high school or college coach, this whole thing rebrands itself to your colors, to your logo on the coach side. It also does it on the phone side. So let me go here real quick. So I just sent myself an invite. Next time I open the app, it's going to come up and say, hey, Coach Dallas Webster asked you to join the team. In this case, the Good Miss Golf. If I say join, what you're going to notice is it rebrands the app. It now has the colors of that team. The next time I open this app, it'll also have the logo and stuff here as well embedded in the app. So everywhere they go, it's going to remind them that they're on your team. So let's go back to that coach side. In this case, now I've got more players in here. You can break your players into buckets. So let's say you're a high school coach and you've got a varsity and a junior varsity, or you've got a boys and a girls team. You can divide your players that way so that the references and easy filtering and search capability by either group or person. You've got that fun leaderboard like I showed on the right-hand side where you can see who's hitting the longest drive, who's making the most putts, and try to motivate the team that way. But you've also got this nice kind of course management view. Again, very shot link-like, where it's going to show you where players are hitting shots, where they're scoring from where those shots are. So now you could get in a team room and start talking strategy, right? Hey, hole number 1 is the hardest hole for us. Laying up isn't benefiting us here. In this case, you probably want to cut that corner and get it as close as you can. That's where we're going to go score better. But you could go almost hole by hole and have those conversations. If you want to talk to just one player, you can do that as well. So if I type in Brooks here and search for just him, now I've got just to look at Brooks and where he's hitting shots. And I can have a one-on-one conversation with Brooks with him on course strategy, right? Really talk about where he's hitting it. And the decisions he's making, so we can make sure we're headed in the right direction.
So a related question here, Dallas. So, I've got a high school team that may not consistently track, right, the shots, right, or input the data 100% of the time, right, a certain way. Coach Callum asks, can you leave it in their pocket, and can I still see those, some output? So I guess the way I'm reading it, Callum can help us out here. But if I have 10 players during that qualifying round, or, casual, can they leave it in their pocket and the coach still get information without them doing anything?
So that means if they never go back after the round and track the shots and commit the shots and whatever, will you get something out of it? So we do have their breadcrumbs and we do have their shot locations. They're all on the cloud. We don't have that portal built into the coach app today, right? But kind of what you're talking about there is almost a live scoring type of approach. maybe I'm not seeing the scores and what they shot, but I could go look at the breadcrumbs and where they went and where they hit shot locations. Yes, we had that data, and we're working to kind of build out some of those views, or at least talking about building out some of those views, including a live scoring where you could link all of those players, see where they are on the golf course, and even have a leaderboard. So I alluded to that a little bit here, even in the current version of the app. But now when you start a round, one of the things that your players would even be able to do is, let's say they're on a team, they can add those other 4 players as friends and add them to their tee time. And now when they play, they're going to have a scorecard that shows all of those players at the same time. It's going to show all of their shots and shot trails overlaid with each other. So I'll see not just the shots I hit, but the shots the other guys I was playing with hit, whether they're teammates or friends. So that you can start to have kind of those friendly conversations, say, hey, who hit the longest drive on hole number 6, or who hit the longest drive of the day? That's getting more and more connected. So we're using that not just for the friends and the social aspect of it, but obviously also for coaches to be able to track players and have players linked together as they look at that data.
So best practice, I guess, to address that, my question, right? Best practice is using the phone or the watch on course to mark score, right? If they can, right? Obviously, it could be different tournament setting. Or it's a post round, right? To spend 10, 15 minutes going through that. It's not what it used to be on the spreadsheet, right? Like
yeah.
Right?
So if they don't even pull the phone out while they're playing, you're probably talking about 10 minutes to put in the data. After they've played a round or 2, maybe that gets down to 5. Once they get familiar with the system, there is a learning curve, like there is with anything, especially if you're doing it all from scratch without using the app on the golf course. If you even if it's a tournament condition, if you can at least turn the phone on and have the round running in the background with it in your golf bag the whole time, that's still going to collect data and even make that post-round editing process that much faster. If they put in scores as they go, again, each level kind of makes the editing process less and less and less, to where it can go from, say, a 10-minute max to do everything from scratch to, a 30-second exercise to just make sure there's no crazy outliers if you have a watch. But there's different ways to get that data in. We cover a lot of that in our quick start video. But you can interact with the app on the golf course as little or as much as you want, right? We have some users that are using that virtual caddy function and pulling it up to plan their shot every time they hit a shot. And that's okay too. And then we have some users that don't pull it out at all the entire time they play, myself included. I start the round, I use my watch, otherwise I don't pull the phone out, and I still get all of that data out of it at the end.
So we've got about 6 or 7 minutes left. Brian, we've got tons of questions coming in, so we'll make sure to circle back on these questions and get some answers back out to everybody, post webinar here. But any consistent themes, Brian, that you think are worth touching on here last 6 or 7 minutes?
Yeah, just a couple things. Thanks, Mike. There's been a lot of questions about pricing, so I'll just kind of go over this verbally, but it's also in the chat. So if you want to check there, the pricing on the individual basis, we've got the par version is $19.99 a year, the birdie version is $59.99 a year, and then the eagle version is $119.99 a year. Again, that's all kind of in the chat. You'll see that there. If you're one of the pros, and we saw this come up a few different times, if you're one of the pros that's looking for bulk pricing, I think you can start to see that this would be pretty advantageous if you're working with a group of students, right? Whether you're a high school, college coach, or working inside of an academy environment, if you have this kind of information coming to you, it certainly helps build better lesson plans. Just reach out to us at sales@v1sports.com, and then we can kind of go through that with you depending on the number of students you've got, whether you'd like that on a monthly or annual basis. We've got multiple plans we can work through with you on that. And before I toss it back to Dallas, again, this is really kind of a recurring theme for this entire 2-day summit, which is be intentional about building a game plan. Whether you're one of the golfers who's looking to figure out a way to do this DIY, or if you're an instructor and you're working with a number of students, this gives you the data as good as any product certainly out there, and as easy as it could possibly come, whether you're looking at it as a coach or a player. Dallas and his team have put a lot of time and kind of the meat and potatoes behind this to make sure that you have actionable data to build a plan. And so we've been talking a lot about that, is be intentional about it. Look to build your plan off of data, not just off of feel, and ultimately your players will get to a better spot, right? And so again, whether that's personally or for your academy players, your team, you can use this data in that way. So Again, Mike, as Mike said, if we didn't get to your question, we'll follow up in the chat room and make sure every one of them gets answered. If it's about pricing, contact us at sales@v1sports.com. And with that, I'll kind of turn it over to you, Dallas. Close us up here in the last 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, absolutely. So the key things I want to touch on is from a V1 game perspective, our goal is to capture all this data and be non-disruptive to your round of golf. So again, anybody who tries the system, if you get in there and you're frustrated, or if it's not meeting your expectations, we want that feedback. There's likely a way that you could be using the app that we could help you, and we can get you off on the right foot. We're confident that the technology, particularly with the watch and with some of these auto shot detection, can get this data in a way that's easy and non-disruptive to your golf game. And we're confident that once you play those couple of rounds and get that data and that feedback, you'll really start to see the value of what you get out of those post-round summaries and those different pieces. I think I showed a little bit about that in the app as well. From the coaching side, once you get your players invested and they start using the app and you're getting that data, if there's any information that you're used to, that you're not seeing, or that you'd like to see, again, we can calculate anything under the sun. Once we have this data in there, we can really do anything we need to with it. And so we want to know either those pain points or those things that are missing, so that we can, grow this and make sure it's solving that need for teaching professionals, for golf coaches of college or high school teams, and of course for our individual players that are out there trying to learn and use the data themselves. But point here is that feedback loop, right? We're trying to go from on-course performance to that swing analysis and that practice and that working with the coach, connect all those pieces in a way that really get us to where we want to go, which is playing better golf.
And remember, if you're a subscriber to if you're a teacher, right, and you're subscribing to V1 Pro or V1 Pro Mobile, V1 Coach comes with your subscription package. So, couldn't think of a better tool and way to get that data directly synced up with you as a coach. And Dallas and his team, again, have spent a lot of time to make sure that, to his point, as a coach, if you're not seeing it, certainly let us know. But we think that in the coach portal, you'll really enjoy kind of building that into a stickier customer and really a better student. So make sure you check that out.
All right, Dallas, thanks a ton. Awesome job, as always. Brian, thank you for hopping on with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. And again, any follow-up questions? We appreciate everybody joining, whether you're a golfer, a golf nut, a golf teacher. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with V1 Sports. We love you guys. We thank you for all that you do. If you're a teacher in the game, thank you so much. And if you're a player, you always make us kind of strive to do better. So we thank you for that as well. Hope everybody has a great day.
Thanks. Thanks, Brian.